an attempt to examine a detail of apparently Patrick Deneen's main plaint with Strauss, which seems to me to be an unusual one. In a way, Strauss is just seemingly just declaring him to be boring, because he's saying Deneen doesn't accept the problem, which both the major parties regard as important. It as a shared ground of whether there is historicism or whether there isn't. So it says, so Patrick Deneen simply doesn't accept, stated more positively, presentism. He doesn't accept that there's such a thing as presentism in any real sense. He's like this, and then he makes a joke about the American Political Science Association. They do that kind of thing over there. They invent these things. And basically, it seems that after giving his presentation on the East Coast or radical Straussians, who are supposedly, according to his view, both more interested in getting to the truth, but also more interested in sort of swaggering in the way of Alan Bloom swaggered as a Straussian, in sort of as though Plato's Academy were being lived out again, and he were Socrates himself, or Plato himself. And then he says there's the West Coast, he calls them something like, does he call them the Boomer Straussians? I don't know, but in any case, I guess that makes sense. In any case, like their main feature, according to him, is that they treat Strauss as presenting liberal democracy as being sort of aggrandizing liberal democracy. Somehow saying it's the only choice amongst the others in this Churchillian sense. And pragmatically it must be accepted these days, or something like that. And then in other ways, these so-called West Coast Straussians have taken up Strauss not as a philosopher, but as someone who sings the seriousness and pronounces the most proper prayers to the American founders, and therefore increases the nobility of the American thing. It's like almost like Daughters of the American Revolution type of organization. This revolution is permanent, and we're still gathering prestigious names like Strauss to secure its grandeurs. And fireworks going off, and the film Notorious, and so on. But then, what does Deneen actually say? He doesn't really care about these two whether these two warring factions are actually that good or bad for the current academy. What he really cares about is how it affects him, and because how it affects him is that he's someone who says we should understand the muses as springing from Mnemosyne as sort of like a natural thing that goes back all the way to the beginning of the Greeks, and that they have observed, therefore, that the historical deposit is something that we're conserving and something that we must uphold. And I, Patrick Deneen, am the one that's doing this, and not the one that's bringing in the perversions or imaginations that I could be a founder myself. So I think the main problem with all this is it's so sincere. It's such a sincere statement of faith, confession of faith, that it just shows that Deneen is boring. Deneen is boring. And then that's all Strauss would probably say there. He'd say Deneen. Okay, he'd say, I mean, put the other way, they'd say Deneen has a tradition that's prior to our tradition. He's a different kind of Now, I'd say his interpretation is a bit odd because, I mean, the Muses um, has one, we have in the tradition this split between that for the sons of Cain to be the first artisans is a sign of the expulsion from paradise. So it has a different thrust than for at the beginning of the Greeks, Mnemosyne and the Muses as being the bringers from the gods of the art, so that the art has a connection to the immortal gods. That there's bliss on, Mount Etna or wherever they are, never dies. So they have different presentations here, but it seems like the one Deneen just wants to hone in on is almost. So what he's focusing on is his point is that Strauss has said even Burke. That's what's really smarting him in an orange hot hissing coal way, is that Strauss has said, "Oh, Burke is historicist." So I mean, the reason Strauss says that is because Burke, like Hobbes, has accepted something like the summa ratio version that's mentioned in the discussion that Hobbes has between the philosopher and the natural rights lawyer, where they're saying right is not something that happens through one wise lawgiver, as though this one wise lawgiver were like receiving the revealed text, but it's rather that through the collective genius of the Englishmen over many generations, the law is made pure through the judge-made law, through the law of precedent. And so this theory in Burke, which Burke accepts and which was generally accepted by the English jurists, Strauss says this is the kind of historicism. This is not the real conservatism. This isn't the way that Plato understood it. But then, you see, that's the problem. If either we're drawn into this problem of, sorting out how do we address ourselves here if we know about some of these things and if we see that they're cogent. Where to start with the analysis, all kinds of problems come in. So that I think, Strauss would say, fine, you're part of a tradition that doesn't accept these problems, and that is not to be. And then, so he wouldn't include Deneen as a historicist, as he does with Burke. So I mean, Deneen wouldn't actually be in the same boat with Burke unless Deneen positively affirmed some of these quite un-Catholic notions. But sometimes the Catholics, in the course of presenting the teaching of Christ to themselves, also introduced this kind of formulas, this kind of changes of key of the presentation of the teaching.